Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Rena Loughlin, and I am the Program Director for the Epilepsy Foundation, Eastern Pennsylvania. I'm so excited to be your host for the first session of this webinar series on safety devices for epilepsy. This webinar series is a result of a wonderful collaboration between the Epilepsy Foundation, Eastern PA, it'sYourEpilepsy.com, the Brain Recovery Project, and EquipMeOT. We know how important safety is for individuals diagnosed with epilepsy and their families, given the unpredictable nature of seizures and the other challenges that come along with the epilepsy journey. Just a reminder, your audio and video will be muted for the entirety of the webinar. This webinar will be re-recorded for future viewing. You will have the opportunity to ask questions via the chat box, and your questions will be asked to Lindsay after her presentation. So today we have the honor of having Lindsay DeLong present on maximizing safety and independence at home. Lindsay is a licensed occupational therapist with over 10 years of experience working in the home environment to improve quality of life through home modifications and education. Lindsay, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm super happy to be here. I am going to give you guys as much practical information as I can fit into this, and I look forward to your questions at the end. So if anything needs clarification or you need additional information, do not be shy. I'm happy to answer those. So let's go ahead and get started. So see if I can get to the next slide. Oh, there it goes. So what to expect from this presentation. So basically my goal is to introduce you on how to get started with the home modification adaptation process, discuss generalized whole home accessibility concepts, as well as some specifics to the kitchen, bedroom, and bathroom, which are the three main areas that I tend to work most often in when I go into people's homes, and then some general safety considerations, and then time for questions, which will come at the end. Okay, next slide. Rena, can you go ahead and go to the next slide for me? Thank you. So let's go ahead and get started with home modifications and equipment. And this is just a general place to jump off and get started. First thing that I would suggest for most individuals that would be helpful is to seeking out a specialist. Trying to do a lot of these things completely on your own can be very overwhelming, and to get a really specialized and unique to your individual experiences, it's great to get an OT into the house to do an evaluation. That's the first place I'd always start. I might be a little biased given that's what I do for a living, but it's really helpful to have us come in and do a general home evaluation, get to know you, get to know your situation, who lives in the home, who utilizes the spaces. And then if you do decide to go in for a deeper modification, which may require a builder to come in or a renovator to come in, look for a CAP certified specialist. This is somebody who has gone through classes to help them be more aware and to be fully trained on accessibility in the home. So this will be very helpful in keeping the conversation really geared and appropriate to your needs. So prioritizing those specific needs is my next point, and I'm going to hammer this thing home, but it's really important to recognize that no individual experience is going to be identical to another person's. So being able to identify the specific areas of need, what is important to you, what is important to you, the family, what's specifically important to the home environment, whether it's an apartment or if it's an owned home or you're looking to move. There's just a lot of specifics that need to be evaluated. And then thinking long term. I like to assess things as they are with the consideration for the future. How is this decision going to impact people as they move forward? And how is it going to be keep their lives positive and feeling safe and secure for the long term? As some people know, it can be very unpredictable, but generally speaking, we can make decisions that make that long-term success a possibility. All right, Rena, go ahead and hit the next slide. So the majority of injuries for people with epilepsy actually occur in the home. Research has supported this, and it gives us a lot of reason for focusing on the home as a place to start for preventative care. We want to prevent injury. We want to prevent undue stress on both an individual living with epilepsy as well as any of their caregivers or family members to make their experience as positive and comfortable as possible, because home is where the heart is, and that's where we want to keep people staying safe. Okay, let's talk about whole home accessibility. So these are some considerations for that would kind of be for the whole house. If you're somebody looking to purchase a home or you're looking to modify an existing home, these are things that I like to bring up right off the bat. So egress, these would be the entrances and exits of a home, considering whether you have any barrier-free entrances available. This picture I have here shows a home that has a very small barrier to enter the front door, could easily be ramped. You also have attached garages, which means you could easily put potentially a ramp inside of a covered area if you live in an area that has winter, snow, or ice. So having that option as a possibility, it doesn't always have to be there right away, but kind of thinking about those entrances and exits right away early on can be very helpful, even if you don't need those ramps right up front. So knowing the stairs, whether that's on the exterior of the home or in the interior of the home, stairs are a huge portion of our safety management. Obviously, I'm a big proponent of using doors and barriers at the tops of stairs to prevent unnecessary falls. We use a lot of really, I've worked with several contractors that have helped us build really beautiful door gate systems that are half gates that are taller for adults to prevent accidental trips and stumbles down the stairs, but they're easily manageable and they go with the decoration of the home versus using kind of add-on child safety gates, which are okay for children, but as soon as somebody grows to an adult size, they don't become as secure. So considering that is certainly important. Main floor layout. I always recommend considering a home that has a main floor full bathroom option, so a toilet, shower, and sink on the main floor, as well as a bedroom option. This doesn't have to be a conforming bedroom, but a space that could be set aside in case you needed a main floor sleeping arrangement, whether that's a den or a dining room or just a space that you could kind of carve out to place somebody on a main floor if that was necessary in the future. Open floor spaces. Obviously, these are going to be really helpful just for equipment management. If you are somebody who needs some sort of a device like a wheelchair or a walker or even a cane, having that open concept is going to make your movement much easier. It also reduces the risk of injury from falls because there's fewer walls, fewer corners. So you can kind of open that space up and have lower incidence of injury in a case of a fall. So let's talk about flooring options. This is something I always like to mention because it's a little different when you're dealing with preventative care, especially with unpredictable seizures. Having carpet is actually a good thing. And normally as an OT in accessibility, I would recommend having hard flooring throughout because it's going to be the safest and easiest to manage with wheelchairs, walkers, and that is still the case if you're somebody who relies on a piece of mobility device. But having a very tightly weaved carpet with a good pad underneath it can also be really, really helpful. Avoiding things like tile and concrete floors is always a good idea when you're considering your flooring choices. So here's a couple images to kind of pound home the idea that I was just stating. Upper left, we have a house that has a natural gradient ramp on the exterior, as well as a zero barrier entry on the door. This would be good in a warm weather climate or a place where maybe you have a secondary ramp in the garage if you have snow and ice considerations. On the upper right, you can see one of those fancy gates I was talking about, a beautiful addition to a home rather than something that kind of detracts. And this is going to add a lot of extra safety to those stairs. Lower left is a fully accessible bathroom. This is not always an option for everybody, but I do like to show an image of kind of what conceptually we're talking about when we say fully accessible. We have a barrier-free shower. There's one feature of this shower I actually don't like, and I'll talk about that when I get to bathrooms. But generally speaking, this space would be able to accommodate just about any restriction that might be in place, whether that's a wheelchair, a walker, multiple caregivers having to be present, you have the space for that. So that's kind of a target to shoot for. And then on the lower right, I have a product here that I really, really like. It can be used all over the home, and I'll reference it in the future too, which are these bumpers. These are foam bumpers that can be cut to any shape. They come with corner pieces so that you can place them on table edges, stairs, countertops to provide a padded surface to prevent injury from falls. They also come in a variety of colors, whether you want them to match your surface or to create a contrast. And contrast can be nice to provide a little bit of visual cue. If you have some people with some visual perceptual deficits on stairs, for example, to create that clear edge so that they're not accidentally understepping or overstepping the edge of the stairs. Okay, so let's jump into the heart of the home, the kitchen. This is an area that sometimes gets missed when people talk about adding accessibility features, but I like to make sure it's a top priority because for most, it's a place where you want to be able to engage, whether that's to assist somebody in the kitchen, or you're going to be living independently and you want to be able to safely assume some basic kitchen tasks. So the first two things I'm going to talk about are items that I keep in my OT tool bag. These are items that I hand out on the regular to just about everybody because they just have a lot of practicality. The first one is Dicem. Dicem is the blue sheet product on the upper right, and that is a product that comes in a roll. It is a double-sided sticky silicone. It's very low cost, around $20 for a full roll of it. And you can cut it to any shape or size, and it acts as a stabilizing aid. You can place it underneath a plate or underneath a cutting board, or basically you name it, to stabilize it to keep it from sliding around on your surfaces. It can also be used in your hand to add extra grip if you need to open difficult containers or what that may be. And that's really nice if you have reduced grip strength, if you have trouble with some control, and it just kind of reduces frustration. And I find it to be a really, really nice piece of adaptive equipment to keep around the house. The upper left is the cylindrical foam. Cylindrical foam comes in a large pack, also under $20 for about, I think you get 6 for under $20. And you can see in the picture, they've got it being used with a spoon, a razor, and a looks like a marker. And so it has different size holes so that you can put any kind of utensil into it to build up the grip. This makes it easier to hold on to items. It can also provide some proprioceptive input. So because it's soft and squishy, it's something you can kind of squeeze into, which is really helpful for individuals who may have tremoring. So if you have a shaky hand, having something to squeeze can help reduce the shaking. So that's something to try for a lot of folks who maybe struggle with that, especially in the kitchen or for self-feeding. There's also in this the next row down, you'll see an oven with a red rack bumper on it. And that is a silicone rack bumper. Preventing burns is a huge priority in the kitchen for most populations. And this product is wonderful because it's very low cost. Again, it's flexible. It can be used in a standard oven or even a toaster oven to provide a burn resistant surface on the edge of the racks. So again, this is really helpful if control is a struggle. Sometimes if impulse control is a struggle, somebody reaches too quickly and tends to bump their forearms on that piece of hot metal. Placing this little bit of silicone on it will protect them. So that's a wonderful little feature of that. Next to that one, I have a picture of my favorite cooking tool, and this is the Vidalia Chop Wizard. This is something that's, I believe, it was a As Seen on TV product from many years ago. I've had one for 20 years, and I swear by them as a way to save energy in the kitchen, as well as reduce how much time you're spent with a knife cutting. So you would simply cut something into a small size so that it would fit into the Vidalia chopper, and then you can cut it into smaller diced pieces, depending on what you need for what you're cooking. It's wonderful for meal prep. It's a great thing to use if somebody maybe is very limited in the kitchen, but you'd like to give them a task that they can help with. They can simply smash down that top and they can help dice all of the vegetables for your soup or whatever. So that's a wonderful product. Again, running in the $20 to $25 range. And I've had one for 20 years, so I can vouch for its value. All right, so the next one is going to be counter bumpers, which I showed in the image on the previous slide. Having something on those tough edges, especially if you have sharp edges on your counters, if you have sharp corners, reducing that sharpness by putting some bumpers on it can be hugely effective in reducing risk of injury or severe injury from an accidental stumble or a full-on fall. So having those in place is a great way to prevent that. All right, the two items I have in the bottom images are an auto shut-off tea kettle and an auto shut-off toaster oven. So the tea kettle is a wonderful option to make boiling water easier and safer. This particular one will boil your water, bring it to boiling, and then it will continue to boil for a little time after that. But if it is not dealt with soon, it will turn off on its own, reducing your risk of injury by burns or damage to your kitchen if you leave a pot of water boiling on the stove to just burn. This is also sealed so that the water cannot escape and the steam is not going to burn somebody. So it's just a really nice way to keep a safer option for boiling water. And boiling water is such an essential part of kitchen tasks. And then the toaster oven. I'm a huge proponent of toaster ovens as a more accessible option to the standard oven, as they can be placed in an area that's easier to reach. You can add the bumper on it so that you've reduced your burn risk a little bit more from using it. And this one is an auto shut off. So if it hits the time limit that you've set on it, it will automatically shut off. So if you become incapacitated or have trouble getting to it quickly, it won't continue to cook and burn the food. So this is a really nice feature to just have in the home to keep it from, and to make it more accessible. So you could reach it from a wheelchair level or using a walker and just be able to engage a little bit easier. So there's the kitchen for you. And then let's move forward. Oops. Yep, there we go. To the bedroom. So this is an interesting one, and I have a little bit of information I want to share right up front. I'm going to be sharing some anti-suffocation pillows and mattress concepts. Both of the brands that I'm going to be talking about are located in the UK. They are specific for the epilepsy community. They've been researched and they're pretty cool. But because of challenges with shipping and getting things brought over, they can be quite pricey and difficult to get your hands on. So just with that being in mind, I want to share them so you know about them. And hopefully in the future, they will become more available over here in the US. So the breathable pillow, I have a picture of it up here. This one is by Breathe Easy. This is a UK brand. They primarily, right at the moment, only serve the UK community, but they have in recent history had these available even on Amazon. So hopefully they'll be expanding their sales back to the US again, because the Breathe Easy products do include a line of mattress pads and sheets as well. There's another brand called the Sleep Safe, which has a similar conceptual brand, which is going to provide pillows that, if rolled into them face first, would prevent that suffocation risk. Another option that reduces suffocation risk from a pillow standpoint is making sure that the selected pillows are very firm. Avoid very soft pillows, as those are going to be much more suffocation risk high, as well as your mattresses. Avoiding soft pillow tops. Firm surfaces are difficult to bury the face in, and will likely not result in that suffocation. The other option is they have foam pillows that have holes drilled in them, and usually this is for to keep them from becoming too hot, but the fringe benefit of that being that they are more breathable. So those are some alternatives to these Breathe Easy and Sleep Safe products. The Sleep Safe products are being shipped to the US. It's just pricey because of the shipping challenges at the moment. So another thing that I want to talk about is fall prevention and kind of injury prevention. One thing with beds is, and typically with seizure precautions, we don't use traditional bed rails. And the reason for that being is it can be a suffocation risk if they have a material on them, but even more so, they can be an impingement, or you can get caught up in them if you roll into them and an arm slides between the mattress and the rail. So we don't often put them in place, and they can also make it difficult to actually get in and out of bed quickly if there was an emergency. It can make it more difficult for a loved one to assist. So instead of a bed rail, we tend to recommend drop cushions and lower beds. So the drop cushion here that I have pictured is under $100. It's available as a gymnastics cushion, but it folds into a trifold, so it's easy to kind of slide under the bed when you're not using it. But having that next to the bed as a drop point, if somebody were to accidentally roll out, is a good option as an alternative to the traditional bed rail. I also recommend a high resolution monitor camera. These are so much more affordable than they ever used to be. I know when my children were young, we invested in this big monster unit, and now you can buy them for a quarter of the price with excellent visibility, sound quality, communication ability between two rooms. So having a really high quality, high resolution monitor available is a great idea. And then bed alarms. Bed alarms have also come a long way, and these can be a great option if you're concerned about somebody or detecting a seizure that might be happening using this option. I know you guys will have an additional webinar opportunity coming up soon, and that will offer you the ability to see more seizure detecting things that could be useful in the bedroom if you're trying to keep monitor of somebody who is sleeping. But this particular bed alarm is nice because it's fully wireless. The wireless bed alarm can be placed anywhere under the person in bed, typically around the torso area, and it would detect if the movement was significant enough to take the full body weight off of that. And then the actual alarm system could be in a different room to alert you to the situation unfolding. So this is just a few things that I would recommend to consider in the bedroom, but certainly there are more options out there. All right. Bathroom. As an OT, this is my bread and butter. I love to talk bathrooms because this is probably one of the most important areas to focus some attention on. We find that an inaccessible bathroom is the #1 thing that gets people placed into a residential or nursing home type setting. And so having bathrooms that are geared to provide success is so important in every home. So low-cost bathroom tools. These are things that you can get and set up without having to do massive remodels. The first one being shock-absorbing floor mats. Now, my one thing with floor mats is I like these because if you were to fall on the hard tile, they would absorb a lot of the pressure of the fall and prevent potentially pretty severe injury, but they can also be a trip hazard. So it's all about balancing that with making sure that whatever shock-absorbing floor mats you have in place, they are going to provide a good amount of protection between or non-skid between the floor and the actual mat itself. Don't want them buckling up underneath you. You do want them to be absorbent to take up any water or soap that might get onto the floor to kind of reduce that slip risk. But a good shock absorbing floor mat is a good place to start. And these things come in a variety of sizes, so you can really fit them or use multiple to kind of cover some floor space around the shower or even around the toilet. But again, if you're using a walker or a wheelchair, can't use these. So just these are for some and not for all. Let's talk shower seating. This is a gigantic, could be its own lecture, but shower seating comes in a lot of varieties. I have some images on the right here, and I want to just identify the different types of shower seating so that you can kind of figure out what might work for you. At the top, I have a standard shower chair. Okay, so a standard shower chair is defined by the sense that the entire chair fits within the confines of the tub or shower. This one's a 4-foot, they are 4-legged with arms and a back. They come with no arms, they come with no back. They come in a round stool with a slightly smaller base for those smaller showers. They come with a pivoting base. I don't like that one very much. It's a little unstable. They come in beautiful varieties that are very stylistically pleasing. And in the picture I had before of the accessible bathroom, they had a folding down shower chair that was installed in the shower. That's a nice option if you're looking at doing some sort of more involved remodel of a bathroom. So a shower chair that fits all within the shower is going to be defined as that. The two images down below that are called tub transfer benches. These are going to actually sit partially within the shower and partially outside of the shower. So they are going to, the final third of it, so the area just beyond the backrest is supposed to sit outside of your shower. These are most practical in a tub shower combination, and they're meant to prevent somebody from having to step over the edge of their shower, whether that be because they are too weak to do that movement or unstable, or they need significant assistance to make the step over a shower bench or over the shower edge. All of these things could be reason why you would use a tub transfer bench. They are a little bit bulky. They take up a little more space. So depending on how your bathroom is laid out, you may have to figure that out a bit. But they're pretty affordable, and they can be super, super valuable in reducing fall risk as well as making the user more comfortable. If they're having a lot of anxiety about getting into the shower because they're fearful of falling, this can be a great way to reduce that fear. The seat below that is also a tub transfer bench, but this is a sliding tub transfer bench. They come with a sliding seat. This is going to be used in situations where somebody can't physically slide themselves over on the bench. This would be more in a situation where a caregiver is providing that assistance to get over into the shower. Nice thing about these is that they can also come with a pivoting option. So the seat will slide out and then pivot so that you're not having to make awkward turns and transitions as you get into the shower. Oops, I just lost my image here. There we go. There, we're back. So as far as sliding tub transfer benches go, another feature I like to point out to people that's really, really helpful is in some bathrooms, if the tub and the toilet are near each other, these sliding benches often come with a cutout that can turn them into a commode. So the sliding portion, the track, would reach all the way to the toilet, allow somebody to start on the toilet and then slide into the shower. This is more for somebody who's very physically limited and requires a lot more physical assistance, but these can be so helpful because they're much more affordable than a rolling commode chair, and they work for a lot of different folks. All right, so that's a little jump into the shower seating. One thing I will mention, I, as a therapist, don't love permanent shower seats. So if you're looking to upgrade your shower and the shower installation options that are provided to you all include a built-in shower seat, try and find one that doesn't have that. The reason being is those shower seats tend to be too far away from the shower head. They usually aren't the right height or depth or width. And typically they're not going to be, they're very slippery because a lot of times they're, smooth material, and generally they're not comfortable. So what they really ultimately do is take up a bunch of floor space that might be useful for a more appropriate shower seat. So try to avoid those built-in shower seats. And I also am not a big proponent of the tubs that you can walk into. They have a door on them and they have a seat. That's a whole nother lecture about me not liking those particular types of tubs. But just for reference, those two are not great options in this situation. All right, so let's jump over to doors. Bathroom door considerations are something that I think a lot of people overlook because doors on bathrooms tend to be with the narrowest doors in the house. They're very, very narrow, which makes them very difficult to access using any kind of mobility aid, whether that's a wheelchair or a walker. So something called a swing away door hinge, which is a door hinge that will actually allow the door to swing all the way open instead of stopping, short and creating an additional edge of barrier that you have to contend with. So these swing away door hinges are really low cost and they install very easily, and they can buy you an extra inch of width on the door, which might be just enough to make the door then accessible for a mobility device. I'm a big fan of swing away door hinges. In addition to that, considering the direction of the swing on the door is really important. Anytime you're dealing with interior rooms where somebody could potentially fall or have a seizure that would cause them to block a door, you want to make sure that those doors swing out so that you're not running the risk of them blocking the door and not being able to be helped. So I always recommend these in the bedroom as well as in the bathroom or any other smaller space in the house. That can make a big difference in being able to gain access to somebody who is in need of help. All right, so this one's not so much an equipment, but another consideration for safety, and that's having a hot water limit on your water heater. Whether you have a tankless or a tanked water heater, having that limit on it will prevent accidental scalding in the shower. I have had situations where somebody had become incapacitated during a shower and fell forward and landed on the hot water or on the control and turned it all the way up, and by accident. And somebody came to help them relatively quickly, but even in that short time, they did end up with some mild burns on their back from the experience. So ever since then, I've been a huge proponent of making sure that any shower setup has the hot water limited to a temperature that would not produce scalding on the body. And that can be done without adding any specialty equipment. That's usually something that can be done with your existing hot water heater. All right, so another really low cost bathroom option are these non-slip floor stickers. And I recommend these over traditional non-stick mats or non-slip mats, I should say. Non-slip mats tend to be more of a trip hazard. They're hard to keep clean. The ones with all the little suction cups on the bottom that you see in the shower, they are actually meant to be pulled up and cleaned in your washing machine every single use, which most of us don't do. They also are going to get in the way of the feet of any of the shower chairs I've talked about. They're going to interfere with the ability for those to sit level. So these non-slip floor stickers, much more flexible, can be used on just about any floor surface. They can be cut so that they go around grout instead of over grout, so they don't peel up as easily. They're just generally visually tend to be a little bit more appealing as you can get them in clear so that you don't see them. So the non-slip floor stickers are a really, really good option. Okay, so this next one is what I didn't like about the picture before of the accessible bathroom. It had a glass partition. When you are dealing with risk of fall, risk of losing consciousness, risk of seizures, having glass doors is probably not our best option. So I like to tell people to consider replacing any sort of glass doors with a traditional shower curtain. Shower curtains are going to save you a lot of floor space. You're not going to have any rigid edges to your bathroom space. It's going to make it a much more open floor plan. And there's a lot more flexibility. So a little inside tip I want to leave you with, if you ever need to use a tub transfer bench that sits partially outside of your tub shower, most people get concerned about, oh, my floor is now going to be covered with water. And the way to avoid that is to have a shower curtain, a low cost, dollar store shower curtain. And what you would do is cut a slit in the shower curtain that fits between the slats of your tub transfer bench at the portion that goes outside of the tub. And slide it between there. It'll keep the vast majority of the water from getting all over your floor. So that is why, another reason why I'm a huge proponent of just a standard shower curtain versus the glass. It's just a much easier thing to use with medical equipment. Grab bars versus security pole. So the upper picture is actually my own shower. I installed this Ponte Giulio vinyl coated grab bar. These are beautiful, really nice, practical, functional grab bars that can be placed for anyone to use. We don't have any significant physical limitations in our household, but every single one of us uses the grab bar. Stabilizes us as we step in and out of the shower. You can see here that it has an added feature of the handheld shower head holder, which is another feature of a shower I would highly recommend, is a handheld shower head holder and a handheld shower head that can be brought down to whatever height is necessary if the person using the shower is seated. But you can see having a grab bar in place ahead of time, we don't necessarily need it, but we do use it. So if you're comfortable with adding grab bars, or you live in a situation where adding grab bars is an option, I strongly recommend it. The two locations that we typically start with is one that's going to go up and down near the entrance of the shower someplace. The one in the picture is up and down near just below my shower head and controls. And then a secondary one that would go vertically, or horizontally, I mean, across the wall of the shower. Those two locations tend to be a really good place to start. Another place where you can put grab bars in your bathroom is near the toilet. There are a ton of options if your bathroom does not have a wall near your toilet that you could use, including fold down grab bars that mount up against the wall and then can fold down into position to provide a place to support, or even support structures that can go actually mount to your toilet to give you some sort of support. So there's a lot of options for toilet-based grab systems. I didn't include a lot of that here, as most of the questions I received preemptively when I was creating this presentation were about the shower. So if there's additional questions about toilet options, I can provide that as well. One secret of the OT world is this product that this gentleman in the picture here is using. This is called a standard security pole. A standard security pole acts as a grab bar that is completely mobile and flexible in its positioning. The floor to ceiling tension bar design, you simply extend it until it is tight against your floor and tight against your ceiling. And it doesn't require the addition of screws, although you can add it for additional security. It has rubber feet on the top and on the bottom to keep it really secure. The only caveat is the floor has to be level and the ceiling has to be level. And so it has this movable grab portion. This can be next to a bed. This can be in the bathroom near a shower. You have a lot of options for that. So I use this particular bar here for individuals who need additional flexible support. And again, it's going to be relatively low cost. It's going to cost a little more than a grab bar at around $150. Okay. Let's go to the next one here. There we go. So general safety. This is one that I have learned so much from working with the epilepsy community, the considerations and the thought that goes into keeping your loved ones and yourself safe is incredible. And so I have learned a lot, and I have, I'm going to share a few things here that I find to be particularly helpful, but I also want to make sure and make it clear that there's so much value in communicating with one another and within this community, because there are a ton of safety options when it comes to door locks and emergency systems for elopement risk, or just to help people have a safer existence within their home for supervision reasons. And so as far as door locks are concerned, I have typically found that you don't want to have door locking in the home as far as interior doors, because again, we want to avoid somebody not being easily accessed in case of emergency. So installing lockless interior doors whenever appropriate is a pretty safe bet. And then swinging outdoors, as I discussed with the bathroom, so making sure the doors swing out of the room instead of into the room, also extremely important for access reasons. Keyless entry systems. Keyless entry systems are usually touch code. Sometimes they work with Bluetooth and your phone. So if you get close enough to the lock system, it will unlock based on the phone. Some of them are thumbprint. I like the push button with a code. The nice thing about those is you can have multiple numbers programmed into it. And how I use this oftentimes is to have codes that are set up for emergency contacts. So having a code specific for emergencies allows somebody to gain access to the home without having a key. And that information would obviously be protected and it would be only for emergency use, but that's a really nice feature so that they're not having to bust down doors to get in to gain access to somebody who is having an emergency. So having those keyless entry systems are really nice. We have also used keyless entry systems in the interior of a home to prevent somebody from easily exiting the home. These systems can provide a locking mechanism that is only where one person or a parent or a caregiver has the exit code, but the person themselves maybe does not. This is very important, though, that it would be only used and locked if the person was being supervised. You certainly cannot lock somebody into a home, as that's a major fire risk. So I would not ever recommend that. So secondary locks, these are locks that are typically at the top of the door or added to the door in a hard to reach location. This is often for children. And I really like this particular one at the top is the easiest one I've ever installed. And this one's just a peg with a little sliding glide lock system. The nice thing about this one, it only took me about 5 minutes to install, and it is simply using a drill bit, and you place the peg, and then the little sliding mechanism at the top can be managed from the inside or the outside. So it's never going to cause somebody to be locked out if they can just slide that open. So that's really, really valuable. And again, that one's called the glide lock. And then of course there's door alarms. Door alarms come for every kind of door as well as windows to alert you to somebody opening a door without your knowledge. So having those around the home, having windows that are going to be lockable in the second story, that's another one that I've had some issues with individuals who are high elopement risk and took risky behaviors. And then there's emergency alert systems. Private companies certainly are going to have a lot of different options as far as push button alerts if you need help, or alerts that will notify somebody else if there's been a fall or concerning movement. And one of the nice things is those are things that are becoming more common with our smart tech devices. The newest version of the Apple Watch has a fall detection gyroscope within it. You can call emergency if it detects what it suspects was a fall. And this is something, it will also track, heart rhythms and things like that. And that data can be so helpful in helping to keep people safe and get help to them much quicker. So investing in some smart tech devices. Another smart tech device that many of us have in our homes already is an Amazon Alexa or Echo Dot or the Google version. These typically will have the option of providing an emergency contact. And I didn't know this, but I did do some learning about this a while back, that you can't get them to call 911, but you can get them to dial to an emergency contact that is in your contact list on your phone. So if you sync it with that contact list on your phone, you can then have it call for emergency help. So I have it set up in my home that if I needed to be able to create a voice activated emergency contact, I just say, Alexa, call my emergency contact, and that immediately patches me through to my husband's phone. And that's a really nice option because then the speaker becomes a phone and I can communicate with him from the floor if I needed to. So it's a nice way. And then obviously your cell phone is going to be so valuable. These are all things that can be already in your home that you can then start using for these actions, which I really like to have that as an opportunity. All right, I got through that fast. I got time for some questions, you guys. I know I kind of breezed through some concepts, and I'm happy to clarify on any of those if we need to go back. I also want to mention, before we get into questions, if you have any interest in any of the products I'm talking about, on the key takeaways page, the second page of that flyer is going to have a list of all the links and all of the names of the products that I specifically discussed in this presentation. But if you have additional questions or concerns about some of these products, I will also mention that my program, EquipMeOT, I create videos that often, and this is on YouTube, so if you look up EquipMeOT on YouTube, you will find that I can provide usually detailed installation videos. So if you have questions on how to install some of this equipment or what this equipment might look like in a home, I have about 85 videos up there that is going to provide a lot more detail about this equipment and how it's used, how it's installed, how to deal with some of specific uses and functions for it. So go ahead and check it out there. I'll also make a plug for my Instagram, which is EquipMeOT as well. And on that Instagram channel, I also share kind of any kind of equipment that's coming up that's new that I'm finding interesting, as well as reviewing a lot of the content that I'm discussing here in this presentation. All right.
Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. I know I learned a lot of new things today, so thank you. We do have some questions in chat, so let me go through them here. So when you were talking about some bathroom equipment, someone asked if you had recommendations for adaptable equipment for children.
Sure. So with children, obviously the designs and setups are going to look a little bit different. When it comes to bathing and children, depending on the age of the child, I have worked with several bath lift systems, which would have the option of harness if needed, or simply just a supportive seat that work on more of a kind of a scissor lift system that will allow somebody to transfer a child onto the seat, and then the scissor lift will lower them down into the tub and provide them a secure place to take their bath. This is a great idea if you're dealing with kind of unpredictable seizure activity, because obviously you don't want to have a child run the risk of falling over in the tub. There are non-lift systems for the even younger children. I know some people rely on things like the bumpo seat style, where it's going to provide some support to the child so that they're more upright, depending on cord control, head control. There's a lot of things that you can do. Pediatrics is not my specialty, and I will say the best bet, if you're having trouble with these types of activities and your child and you have concerns, I would strongly recommend advocating for a referral to occupational therapy services in an outpatient or home-based setting, because they're going to be able to identify the specific needs of that individual child and be able to identify the appropriate equipment for their specific needs. So that's a little bit of a tricky one, and I know I didn't delve too deeply into pediatrics in this presentation, but that's part of the reason why. It is definitely a tricky one to be able to make general recommendations for.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. Another person made a comment that to make all of these changes and adjustments might be overwhelming and expensive. So if you can make them by steps, which changes would you think are a priority?
That's an excellent question. And prioritizing your journey as far as improving the accessibility of your home is going to be a personal journey, but I would always recommend there are a few places to place a little higher priority on. The first being the bathroom. I know I spent a lot of time in the bathroom, but there's a reason why. It often is overlooked because it's not particularly glamorous to think about our bodily functions, but being able to have safe, consistent access to a bathroom, whether that's using the traditional bathroom setup with a toilet, shower, bath, whatever, or having a commode option that would allow for access to a safe toileting situation, or modifying your shower experience to be something that is wheelchair accessible. If you don't need all of that up front, making that bathroom safe and secure for you now with adding fall prevention things like a grab bar is a really, really solid place to start. Because like I said, even if you don't need it right away, having it when you do need it is going to be potentially life-saving or injury-saving to stabilize yourself. So I love to start in the bathroom. I also think that considering the areas of greatest risk, I am going to do a secondary follow-up on some community things, and that's going to include some car considerations and transferring and dealing with some of the safety concerns with being out into the world. So having an idea of what's important to you and how you want to identify those things, and then kind of target that as your starting point. I do still strongly recommend anyone who's really struggling at home, don't do it by yourself. Seek out that referral. See if your physician or whoever is your primary service provider can get you into either an outpatient setting to evaluate these concerns, and then hopefully a home health therapist could come out and do some work with you. To be very fair though, if you've never received home health services, I will say this: home health does require, if you're receiving those services through Medicaid or Medicare or most general insurance providers, does require that you are homebound. And those rules can be rather tight. So sometimes it's difficult to get that home health referral unless you're experiencing a significant downturn in function, which is a really big bummer, because it'd be awfully nice if we could come in when you're not having as much trouble and we could prevent the issues. But that's a challenge. So an outpatient setting, an OT could also provide you with some of this input. Have lots of pictures ready, have your priorities figured out ahead of time, and see if you can get that figured out for yourself, because it's a long process and you need people that can really support you through it, because prioritizing is definitely tricky.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. And this kind of goes along to what you just said, but how much does it cost to have an OT go through the house to make recommendations for accommodations, to make it inside the house and outside the house?
Sure. So depending on your insurance, you may have a home health covered benefit. And by home health covered benefit, I mean specifically for a home evaluation. Medicare and Medicaid both have riders on most of the coverage plans. I believe it's on plan. It's usually a secondary coverage benefit where you can have a home specialized therapist, usually an OT, come through and do usually about an hour worth of evaluating, or sometimes 2 hours, depending on the size of the home and the amount of issues that they're addressing. And that would be of no cost. However, if you sought to do it out of pocket, which many people will if they choose a therapist that they really want to work with, and those typically are around $100 an hour, sometimes $200. It really depends on the region you're in. Certain states are going to be more, cities and states are going to be more expensive than others. And people who carry a lot more specialized knowledge are certainly going to charge a little bit more. But I'd say you're probably looking at around $100 to $200 an hour. And typically a home evaluation done by an experienced OT is going to run 1 to 2 hours. And that is going to come with a fully detailed write-up of what they find and recommend for your situation. So you would be left with that as a reference material, and any follow-up would then again be paid out of pocket. So it's not an inexpensive investment, but if you consider the value you would get out of that, it's certainly worth looking into.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Do you know if there are OTs that specialize in epilepsy who are familiar with these specific recommendations?
That is a good question. And in doing my research, I kind of looked into that a little bit to see if anyone was really diving deeply into this. And the answer is, I did not find that. I do not know if they exist because I wasn't able to find like epilepsy specific, but there is a large contingent of OTs, including myself, who are certified brain injury specialists. And in our training for certified brain injury specialty, we are required to do extensive training as well as experiential work with seizure protocol populations. So that can be epilepsy, that can be acquired seizure conditions from brain injuries, traumatic and non-traumatic. And so in that, if you find somebody who's an occupational therapist, who's a certified brain injury specialist, you're going to be heading in the right direction to finding somebody who can give you a more clear answer for the questions you may have. But as far as being epilepsy specific, that seems to be a niche that was a little harder to find names to share. I wish I had some specific names I could share. but it's certainly an area of interest. And I've reached out to some of my OTs in the neuro community, and most of them have worked with individuals with epilepsy, but they don't consider it their specialty. They tend to treat all neurological conditions fairly freely.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Lindsay. Another person wants to know, are there any things that you could recommend for schools?
So schools is a really big one. And most schools have occupational therapists on staff. Unfortunately, most school OTs are not certified brain injury specialists. Now, that's not to say all of them are not, because I know some that are. And so they are typically the ones who are going to make accommodations or help to make accommodations for students. Now, that being said, certain things can certainly make the school experience feel safer and more productive for students with epilepsy. A lot of it is going to be advocacy, helping to educate the staff of a school about what it means and how to deal with seizure protocols. I have worked with 2 students in my career that had seizure precautions. One was epilepsy, one was an acquired seizure disorder from a brain injury. And the vast majority of my time in their school settings was spent educating staff and students on how to assist in the case of an emergency. And then it was a lot of advocating for empowerment so that the student themselves felt that they had the necessary safety features in place. Now, practical things that you can include are, I know with one of the students, we had a head down. So if they became fatigued, too fatigued, that's when they typically had seizures. And so we started to create a protocol for them if they started to feel fatigued, that they could notify the teacher and the teacher would provide them with a safe place to rest within the classroom so they could still receive instruction, but they could do so from a laying down position that was safe and supervised. And this was an interesting experiment. It did actually help reduce the amount of time lost in the classroom, and it did reduce the frequency of his seizures in the classroom as he was able to rest and kind of be more aware of his triggers. We also work a lot with lighting and sensory, so making sure that there's not any major triggers in the classroom, making light more appropriate, reducing fluorescent overheads, whether it was noise, providing noise canceling headphones for noise breaks. There's a lot of things that can be done in a classroom setting that also can be done in the home setting that can make sure that people are more successful in those various environments.
Wonderful. I don't see any other questions in chat, so this is your time for any last minute questions. Please put them in chat. We'll give everyone about a minute.
And I'll be happy to answer any questions that might come up after the fact. I have, like I said, if you, I believe my contact information for my 2 profiles on Instagram as well as on YouTube are places that people can ask me questions. On Instagram, I try to answer my DMs pretty much daily, so that's a good place to reach me. And I can also share an email address to which you could ask specific questions in the next few days if they come up.
We actually have one last question here, Lindsay.
Sure.
Anything that you can suggest for college dorms?
Ooh, this is a good one. So my roommate in college, her best friend had epilepsy, and she had to have a bunch of accommodations in her dorm setup. One of the interesting ones for the dorm was, this is something I didn't realize, but most dorms in older universities do not have good temperature control. And one of her seizure triggers was extremely overheated. And she was supposed to live in a dorm that did not have an air conditioner. So she was able to get an air conditioner for her dorm to make sure that she did not have any issues with overheating causing seizures. In this particular situation, it was a congregate bathroom. So it was a bathroom that was shared amongst many students, which is not particularly safe because it's not easy to make that accessible. So she did work with the university to advocate for a different dorm setting that had individual bathrooms that then could have certain accommodations made. She added countertop bumpers to the bathrooms as well as in the dorm room. All of the edges of the sharp edges of the furniture was bumped with foam. She used, she had a bunch of other things that were really interesting. I haven't thought about that in a while. She had a main, so she did not loft her bed, obviously. She had a low bed as well as a futon mattress that she'd pull out onto the floor next to the bed. And that was in case she rolled off, as it did occasionally happen in her night during her sleep. Her epilepsy was fairly well controlled, but obviously a big thing, like I said, with the schools is prevention, management of triggers. It's increasing the awareness of the people around you. So making sure that the staff of the dorm is fully aware of the situation. Whoever your hall manager as well as the building manager has all the information necessary for emergency contacts, how to support you in case of an emergency. And then another thing that was really interesting was how she was able to participate in school. Now, this was before we had access to these virtual learning environments that we do now, like we're using right now, which would have been incredibly valuable for her on those days when she was having a little bit more difficulty or fatigue or had a recent seizure and just couldn't quite get up for classes. But her professors were all made aware of some accommodations that needed to be made as far as making her coursework available on days when she needed it. So I have found that for the vast majority, if you ask and you advocate, there's going to be accommodations that can be made. But sometimes it takes a little bit of pushing and a little bit of creativity depending on the university that you select. I went to the University of Michigan, which is an older university. And so the dorms required quite a bit of updating and modifications to make them safe for individuals with disabilities. So it was definitely a little bit harder for her than it would be at maybe a newer, more modern university. So again, a little dependent on the situation, but there's certainly things you can do to make the experience safer and more positive.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. Again, that was fantastic and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So on behalf of the EFEPA, it's your epilepsy.com, the Brain Recovery Project, and EquipMeOT, we thank you for joining us this afternoon. We hope you will attend our next sessions of our safety webinar series. On Wednesday, April 13th at 12 p.m., we will have our seizure detection and alarm session with nurse practitioner Sarah Teft. And on Monday, May 9th at 12 p.m., we will have our Living an Active Life session again with Lindsay. So have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you.